Welcome everybody. It's Live at the Hive episode 32. I'm Dan Nedelko.
And Courtney Castle.
I'm Matthew Chirlenko.
Speak up, son.
Matthew's our graphic designer here, joining us today for some chats about conversion rate optimization and search engine optimization and some creative concepts for 2018, eh, Matt?
Of course.
That's right. Matthew's actually one of our newer team members. He'd been with us for a while, but he was on, what was it? It was your internship.
Yeah, I did my placement for 5 weeks actually at Honeypot.
Yeah.
And then afterwards they hired me full time there. So I've been working for almost just about 2 months.
Yeah.
Here at Honeypot. And it's been great as their graphic designer.
For sure.
And soon to be digital marketing expert. We'll get you there. We'll get you there.
But yeah, so shout out to our fellow Conestoga ad grads.
There you go. So today, so what's up for today? We're going to talk about CRO and SEO.
Yeah, so CRO and SEO, some of our favorite acronyms that we use very often on a daily basis. CRO being conversion rate optimization and SEO being search engine optimization. So two very important things at any point in your marketing strategy when you're considering your online presence. But we thought we would just kind of walk you guys through exactly what we do when we look for recommendations to make, especially when we're just starting out with a client, and kind of how you can replicate that for yourself just to enhance your online presence and your conversion rates. Yeah,
that's right. So first I want to say hey to Scott Amos and Matt from AstroDog Media. Both are watching right now, and Justin gave a shout out to Matt saying ad grads for the win.
Thanks, Justin.
I think we may be one of the largest employers of that program in the Tri-City region.
We are. We're a big representative of the program for sure.
It's got to be a good program. It seems to be working out.
Yeah, and welcome to the others. Welcome. Like to see AstroDog repping, tuning in for the live. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So people will often talk about, I'm doing SEO on my site. I think conversion rate optimization is growing in awareness and popularity, especially just given, the rise of e-commerce stores like on Shopify and things like that. These things have been around for many, many years. I'm like an old man. I was doing it back in like 2002 when it was, stuff the keywords and all that fun stuff. But one of the things I think that's really important to cover is that you can't really just run in and start SEOing your site, start optimizing your site. It really, really requires a plan and an audit, or an audit and a plan.
For sure, yeah. And oftentimes, like, people hear the word audit, and we were saying in the office today, it kind of falls flat because it's like, well, what is this audit? Like, what is the point? And to Dan, like what Dan just said, and before we can actually start making optimizations, whether that's for search rankings and organic traffic or sales conversions, we need to know where you stand at this point now. And that's very much the purpose of the audit. It's something we do for all clients when we start with them because we need to know kind of where they're at with their marketing and their keyword rankings and all that fun stuff. But for yourself, I would recommend doing this check, once a year for sure, but just in terms of kind of your digital presence evaluation,
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important, I'm kind of manic about this type of thing because I think it's so important that once you invest that time, Google's a very reactionary, it's a very fast search engine now. It's very intelligent. Even 4 years ago, the level of AI was nowhere near what it is now. So a couple of things, I think, just before it starts. Matt Stefanich says, look at all the Matts tuning into Live at the Hive. It's true. We have a high density of Matts today.
Oh, yeah.
It's a specialty Matt episode, and we'll have our other Matt on the line too, maybe in the next episode.
Yeah, well, we got Matt from AstroDog. We got Matt Stefanich. We have Matt Chirlenko. Matthew, I call him Matthew. I don't know why.
It's a popular name. Well, that's how we do it there at Honeypot to decipher both of us.
Yes. Otherwise, you don't know who you're talking
Matthew
to.
or Matthew. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure.
Except I say Matthew C because I can't pronounce your last name.
It's easy. It's like Nedelko. It's just what it's phonetic. It's just read it out. Yeah, that's all it does. So one of the things I think that's important with, especially in the search engine optimization side of things, and you get into like the keyword research, and we'll flip over, and we've actually got what is a template of one of our reports that we actually produce, and we're going to walk through how we lay it out, the tools that we use, and how you could go ahead and do this yourself as well. But I think the one most important thing is a lot of people say, you know, we did the site, now we have to search engine optimize it. And that's really the wrong approach, because fundamentally, a search engine is only a window into an individual at the other end that's looking for something. So one of the most powerful things about understanding how your customers are searching for you, what are they looking for? You're getting a lot more into psychology, motivation, what are they thinking, what are they looking for, what are their pain points? It becomes a very non-technical function, and I think that's really the way to approach both of these two things. Search engine optimization is really, I want to understand what my customers are searching for so then I can put the appropriate content and solve their problems. That's the first fundamental. And for conversion rate optimization, it's okay, so now I understand how my leads and customers are behaving on my site. How can I get them to take action? So I have to understand where they're coming from. I have to understand what's motivating them. I have to understand why they're there and what problem are we solving. Again, although you know, you hear SEO and CRO audit, it sounds like a CRA audit, like you're going to sit in a room and go through reams of paperwork and just try to figure things out like that. It's very different than that, in fact. It's a big part, especially on the keyword research side, is it's psychology, behaviors, psychographics, personas, you know, very, very what you would call, it's a very different function than what it appears to be.
Yeah, and really, like in layman's terms, if you rip apart all the marketing jargon, which we love so much, it's really just how do people find and use your site, and how to make them find and use your site in the way that you want them to.
Yep.
And that's really at the base of it what it is. And really to what Dan's saying is that SEO cannot be kind of a living off in its own world, something you consider after the fact or as a stage two. It really should be thought of in tandem with like your website strategy and your online strategy. Yep. And just because you haven't considered it yet, if you haven't yet, doesn't mean you can't consider it now. There's always time to go through your site and SEO optimize. It's definitely a reiterative process. It's never like, well, I'm done. Because like Dan said, there's always changes. There's changes in the way people search for you and your product. There's changes in your own industry and your own landscape. Yep. So, you know, obviously keyword and SEO presence, updated as often as you can is a heartbeat thing. But to what we're talking about is kind of this presence analysis. You know, obviously if you could do it more often than once a year, that would be great. But resource-wise, you know, if you are an entrepreneur or an all-in-one marketer, you know, just at least make sure you're aware of your own presence and where you stand.
Yeah. How customizable is the audit report in terms of where they click, where they're engaging, how long they're staying on your site, where they're coming from? Is it very, very customizable in that aspect? For
sure, yeah. And that's part of why the template we're going to show you guys is definitely just a template, and it is extremely customizable depending on, you know, if you're a B2B product, you know, are you an e-commerce store, or are you more of just like more of an educational, informational site, the purpose of it as well.
Yeah. So one of the big things about this audit and this report, and hi, Nicole Nadelko, welcome to the stream. Hi, honey. Embarrassing me. Anyways, one of the things about the audit and the report are there are tools that go through. We have a lot of tools that we're using here. AHREFS, SEMRUSH, Screaming Frog, and Google Analytics are the four main ones, and Google Search Console. Regardless of that, this whole process of auditing, you start out with a lot of data and information, and it's really understanding the meaning behind all of that. So in that sense, it's where you get all these numbers and you get all this data and you're just pouring through it. And the idea is to put meaning behind that data and to use statistics and to use that data to create an informed persona and make an informed decision. So it goes from this kind of what appears to be very black and white and statistical to very gray. Because what our job is to look at that and say, what does all of this mean? What does it actually mean, right? And as we go through, we'll kind of see that. And when we do these audits, what we're doing is we're going through these reports, and then what we're doing is we're pulling the meaning, and then we're prioritizing our recommendations. We have, you know, we may come out with 100 different recommendations, and then what we do is we say, well, since our goal is X, we're going to do these first 10 things because they're the most important things, right? So yeah, it certainly isn't an algorithm, right? Like it's not just like I do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I'm done. Because when we go through the process, for example, what we're doing is, and this is a big part of what we do, is really trying to understand the business that we're working with. What are you selling? Why are you selling it? Who are you selling it to? Is it the right price point? Is it the right, packaging? Are we communicating it well? And a lot of that informs this as well. And the two-way street, right? Will inform each other. So
For sure.
So yeah, so I think it's just I love doing these. I love pouring through the numbers and analyzing it. I mean, doing the reports is like click, click, click. It's no big deal. So, all right. So let's get started here. Let me see. Where's our?
Yeah, and we're just going to put up our example of our audit report. And like Dan said, the first place that we start is running a lot of different reports and collecting the data that we have to analyze. So there are a lot of really great tools that we use to do that. Screaming Frog, AHREFS, SEMRUsh, Google Analytics. Those are, for anyone in the SEO sphere, we should be very familiar with those names.
Yep.
Very large industry tools that tell us things like which keywords does the site currently rank for, how many backlinks does the site have, things like that. Also, it can give us information on competitors as well, so that we're not only looking at the specific site, but also the industry as a whole. Which kind of keywords are your competitors ranking for and advertising against, for example. So all of that, very important information, and it does go beyond keywords. It goes to other site health, even like technical things like site speed and other elements like that.
Yeah. So up on the screen right now, I've got AHREFS. Jessica Fitzpatrick says hello. Hello. Welcome to the live. Welcome to the live. So of the tools that we're talking about, they're all very powerful. AHREFS is actually has quickly become one of my personal favorites. It's got an enormous amount of data you can dig into. It collects it, it keeps its own index, and you can do a lot of things with it. And I'll just show you a couple here from the example. And we've got videos and screencasts where we actually go through in specific examples that we can also share. But you get organic search reports. You can see that every day they crawl 6 billion web pages. Let's see here. I'll go over to the features. But what AHREFS does is it pulls in the data about a domain. So whether it's honeypotmarketing.com or myshoestore.com, and it tells you how many people are linking to it, where the traffic is coming from, where your organic positions are moving up and down, what your top pages are. It's just a ton of information, competing pages. You can plug your competitors in there to see what their strategies are. And AHREFS is really quite focused a lot on the organic health. And it does do paid keywords as well. So you can also see advertising. You can see where your competitors are advertising. You can see their ad copy. You can see their display copy. You can see how much they're bidding on keywords. So, if you're looking at your competitors and you're seeing that they're obviously spending more money in a certain area, that might be something to think about and emulate and maybe save yourself a bit of money. That's one way to look at it. And that's AHREFS. That's the first tool. So what we do here is there's two main things that we do when we set this up. One is called a site audit, and it's more technical. And it actually crawls the site. It takes about 8 hours to finish. And it gives us all sorts, and this is where the technical stuff comes in because it is very important. And then we set up a domain report in the Site Explorer that will give us more information. You can see here, for example, on the screen, you see things like referring domains. So if you have a PR program and you're getting inbound links and how many people are linking back to your site, you see that growth historically over time. It's just one example, but there's just hundreds of them in there.
Yeah, or a content marketing program, for example, a lot of the time these stats are what dictate, it's very easy to kind of get distracted in marketing. There's a lot of possibilities. And really the question in 2018 is like what channels to choose and which strategies to choose.
Yep.
There's really no lack of ideas or ways to spend your money with modern marketing. But for example, if I went and looked at a site and saw that their referral traffic was really poor and the backlinks were really poor, might consider a content marketing program in which you create a program that encourages guest blogging and backlink creation, or to Dan's point, PR is also helpful with that.
Yeah, and PR and content really blend now these days. It's not just throwing out a release, but getting placements on blogs and on news sites if you can do it. But locally, right? Locally, get involved with a charity. You can get some press coverage, and those are powerful links to your site. They give your site a lot of authority.
For sure, yeah. It could also be part of your paid media plan too. It doesn't necessarily have to be organic. Not everyone has the clout of like a super newsworthy or very large topic that perhaps wants to get picked up by the very busy news outlets. But that does not to say that you can't include these placements in your media purchasing.
Yeah. The next tool that we use here is called SEMRUSH, and quite often people are confused as to why we use both. SEMRUSH is another fantastic tool, very similar in a lot of ways to AHREFS, although their kind of primary focus is on advertising. So their tools on analyzing other advertisers and traffic inbound is a bit stronger than AHREFS. And one of the other reasons that we like to use both, and I know I've had other people question this, is you don't want to just rely on one tool, because these are not exact tools. They have their own index and they make some of their own assumptions as well. So having two tools can help you kind of get a second opinion, right? So it's not exactly one-to-one. And in this tool, we do a very similar thing. We run a site report. Also, the reporting out of SEMRUSH is very nice. It's customizable. We can pick and choose and pull various portions of it, so it helps with the overall presentation later on.
So for each software specifically, are there certain areas that they like to focus more primarily on? So for example, SEMRUSH, you said it focuses more on the creative side of it.
On the pay-per-click and advertising marketing side of it. So they have they can pull display ads for a domain if you wanted to look at it. If they're running advertising, you'll see a long history of those. It's just their main focus was on paid advertising analysis for PPC marketers effectively. And AHREFS is a lot more on the content marketing SEO organic side. They both have crossover tools, so but some are just better than others, right? SEMRUSH is stronger on the paid side for analyzing. You get just a ton of information, and we could spend 3 hours just going through the advertising features on a screencast of how much you can do with it. Yeah.
For sure, yeah. So I think SEMRUSH as an advertising tool might be kind of one of the key differentiators there, is just that if I'm putting together an AdWords search campaign, for example, based on strategic keyword targeting, I can use SEMRUSH to see what high-performing ads, like ad copy, literally it'll show me their SERP that they're using for their ad and where it ranks and things like that.
Yeah, and this is really important. So if you're a PPC marketer, if you're a business person or a marketer, and you're more focused on pay-per-click side, you might, and maybe you had a budget, you couldn't afford AHREFS and SEMRUSH. If you're doing the paid, I would suggest SEMRUSH, because you will still get similar tools that you would get at AHREFS. And likewise, if you're a content marketer or SEO and that's your primary focus, then I would veer towards AHREFS and then go from there. So, yeah. The next tool that we use, because I don't want to spend the entire time on just the tools.
There are a lot of them.
There are a lot. Well, we'll just cover it. This is called Screaming Frog SEO Spider Tool, and not the prettiest thing in the world.
It's been a classic in the SEO game for many, many years now, is it not?
Yeah, it has been. And really the original one was a tool for Windows only called Xenu Link Sleuth. And then this group out of the UK, they developed Screaming Frog, which is a very, very similar thing. What this tool does, and it's for the more technically minded for sure, is it simulates Googlebot spidering a site and gives you very raw reports about how Google will look at your site, and then you can go in and again, it's a very in-depth program. It takes a lot more technical knowledge. It certainly isn't necessary for all types of sites. I've just been using it since God knows when, 2007 or 6 or something. And it's a staple, it's a go-to, it's where you start, and you know the reports that you pull and how you filter them, and then it becomes part of all of that data. So those are the three main tools. Some of the other tools that you would want to use, registering your site with Google Search Console gives you a ton of information about your site. That's actually very important.
Yeah.
And if that is set up, we would also turn to that as a part of the data source.
And really the full suite, probably, if you're looking at the Google Webmaster Tools, like if you're going to have Google Tag Manager and things like that as well, just to help your team with implementation.
Yep, and obviously Google Analytics, right? Or your analytics platform. I would say, I would venture to guess that 95% of the world is using Google Analytics, and then there's some other tools out there, but your analytics tool is extremely important as well. So let's just dive right in. So, are you going? Oh, wait, ooh, sorry, just hiccuped. There's shameless self-promotion. So this is an actual template of what we present to our client whenever we're running one of these. There's 3 significant phases to the process. It's all of the data pulls. That includes the technical SEO. That's literally what the tools we were just talking about. Then we do a keyword and content audit using all of that information that we've gone through, and we typically will divide it up. And then we will pour through this information, Google Analytics, AHREFS, SEMRUSH, and Screaming Frog, and just have a look at what content is performing. Just as one example, when we go through this, and if we see, and quite often this is the case, is that companies' brand name will be 90% of the search traffic, which is fine. It's a bit much. You would probably want it to ideally be around 40% if you had a strong SEO program in search. So people would be searching for things related to what you do. But for example, what we would do is we would analyze the pages on the site that exist and that maybe have rankings on the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th page of Google search. That's always an opportunity because there is a ranking there that exists, but it needs to be improved. But you're starting from something. You're not starting from nothing, right?
For sure, yeah. And there are certain flags, as Dan said, that we look for as we go through certain things that indicate good site health. Like Dan mentioned, branded keywords. You do want a good variety of keywords pushing traffic to your site as well. You don't want all of site traffic pushed through 2 or 3 keywords.
Yep.
But you do want to see a healthy number of also product-focused keywords and things like that, driving traffic to your site. And if you've really paid really good attention to your SEO, you'll probably have long-tail keywords as well, pushing traffic.
Yep. But
those are typically the opportunities when we do look at sites. It's typically in, like Dan said, in pages that have opportunity to rank even higher, that are already showing good indicators of people being interested in discovering it, but they need that extra push to get to page 1.
And keep in mind that your brand name is very important, and so are things like, I don't know, if you're into, if you sell a webinar product, webinars have a high volume of traffic, but they have what's called a low searcher intent. You don't know if that person is searching for my first webinar, webinars, I'm writing a research report on webinars. You get a lot of traffic, but it will be highly unqualified. As you go down to what's called the long tail of search, a good example of long tail are question-based searches. And question-based searches are actually on the rise, both on mobile. Think about it on YouTube, right? How to replace the bathroom faucet. Like that's right?
Or for example, just to expand on the webinar example, instead of just using the keyword webinar, it would be a question like, how to host my own webinar.
Yep.
That would be the difference, and you can see that optimizing your site based on things that are more specific to your product and who you're looking for, it could affect, yes, the traffic, but you're worried about the quality really is what you want to be looking at.
So with the tail of search, and there's actually a great graphic, we can post it up later. Tail of search has low volumes, but there's lots of them. There are a lot of questions that people ask. And when they're asking, this is the beauty of if you've got a small site where you can actually kind of run right up the middle. There's very low competition quite often. If you identify, and this kind of goes into what we were talking about with understanding your customer. If you have 30 questions that your customer asks, and you could have a one-page FAQ, you could have a page for each question, optimize that, you will get each search wouldn't be a lot, but the sum of all of them adds up. The nice thing about it is that the visitor has what we call a high level of intent. They're looking for something. They're ready to take action. They're researching. They're very far down the funnel. So you have a chance to acquire that lead as opposed to so if I had Dan's shoes, obviously I can't compete in PPC with Nike, right? I can't do that. But maybe I could think of, great shoes for Kitchener-Waterloo walking trails, right? Like people search for stuff like that. And then I would find people that are local, and I've got an opportunity, right? People that are ready to purchase and ready to act. So these are important kind of points.
Yeah.
So.
And another great use of the tool is that if you do have hunches like that, it's a great way to confirm them. If you think, hey, and you can think of a keyword, perhaps you're getting people from a certain target audience or that are interested in a particular use of your product, you can confirm those hunches in these tools, and they can tell you what the actual search volume and things like that for those keywords are, so that you can see whether they are worthwhile targeting. Depending on the traffic per month and the cadence of it, it might not, it might be too difficult or not worth your time. But
and also,
like Dan said, it's the strategy of
yeah.
the keyword combination.
And you also have to watch out with these major tools, because there's a certain point where these other tools can kind of drop off, and their search predictions are not 100% accurate. They'll say something like 10 searches a month. And it's only because the index is so big that they tend to record the higher volumes, and at the lower volumes they do become inaccurate. So it's something to be aware of. I think it's most important that when you're developing this strategy, let's call it the 20 questions your customers ask. I mean, that's a persona-based activity. What are your customers looking for, and how can you solve it? Even if you got 5 searches a month and solve 5 problems for 5 real customers, I think that's an important thing to consider for your business, right? You wanna be there. And again, that's why it's not about SEOing your site. It's about providing value for your customer, on that side. So just to keep kind of rolling on through here, we break down our audit, and you could do this too, is having a separate area for key insights, because what's going to happen is you get all sorts of info. You get technical data, you get keywords, contents, it keeps going. And then the key insights are, of these 100 things, what are the 10 things that we think are the most important, and why do we think that? And you can see here, there's, this is all dummy data, just to show the example. But you can see that what we've done is we're prioritizing what we think are the top issues and what we can do to solve them. And again, if you're doing it by yourself, this is an important process, because there's just so much stuff happening over there. It's like a tsunami of information, right?
Okay. For sure, yeah. And there might be a bit of a learning curve as if you're an all-in-one marketer and you're not particularly specialized in SEO and CRO, you might be like, how am I supposed to do this for myself? Yes, there will be a slight learning curve. Yes, there is a lot of jargon associated with it. But one thing I personally like about the tools is that because they are such large industry standard tools, they have a lot of content and training and tutorials to support them. So yes, it may be a little daunting diving into SEMRUSH or AHREFS for your first time, but usually next to every metric, they have the little question mark that explains exactly what that metric means to you, and then it will typically link to a blog post that they have or a tutorial video. So yes, there's a bit of learning, but it's definitely something that you should invest in.
And if you are in digital marketing, you are really obliged to know how these tools work. These tools are the bread and butter of what you do for a living.
There stands no nonsense. You learn it, and that's that.
You really do. You really have to. You really do have to kind of understand these certain points. And again, it's not that everybody needs to be a software developer, but you have to understand the basics. So, for example, our first one is we talk about site architecture and linking. This is a really important thing that I think a lot of people dismiss or get wrong. And it's the internal linking structures of your site are really important for Google to understand what you're about, what you do, and what you think is important on your site. So how the pages are structured together. We have a comment?
Yeah, we have a comment from Ben Miller.
What's Ben saying? I didn't get it. Is it?
He's getting Matthew's getting cat calls.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Hello. What was I saying there?
No, you're just
derailed lost my. Oh yeah. So you need to put in an internal linking structure and point to pages that we would call anchor pages, and there are also money pages, the most important pages. You want to kind of refer back to them. This particular site architecture slide that you're looking at right now is a little bit more in depth, but it's really understanding where do you want people to go on your site, and are you, like one of the big issues in terms of site architecture are people are, they'll have if they're using WordPress, which is very common, they'll have 500 different tags that they've applied. They have 50 categories. You've got to really stop and think about what kind of content you're putting on your site and try to categorize it. Try to make it make sense, because you may think it makes sense, but if someone's coming in and you've just got this crazy structure where your content's all over the place, it's not gonna do you any good.
Essentially take into account the people that are actually viewing it.
Yeah, and always, like really always, that again, this is the biggest thing that over the years that I've had to kind of fight, is people will say, well, you're doing the SEO, don't worry about the design. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way, right? SEO is technical, but the end result is there's a human being that you're trying to appeal to for findability, right? And CRO is the second half once they're there, right, on the site. So we start out with site architecture. Then we look at, again, site content and design. One of the big issues, and from a technical perspective, are you getting catcalled further?
No, Ben's just saying he loves the information too. So.
Oh, okay, that's good. Well,
don't worry, Ben. We appreciate the support.
You can catcall. We've had some lively comment threads happening in the last few weeks, which is always good to see.
Yeah, don't even bring up the lizard people again.
Oh.
Yeah, the lizard people was one of my favorite ones. So site content and design. And again, one of the things that you see, site speed is incredibly important for Google right now. They've come out and said it because of the growth of mobile devices. So we're often on LTE connections or even 3G connections. So site speed is a huge indicator. If you've got a beautiful website with humongous images, Justin Maceo, no, I'm just joking. Our print designer knows.
Oh, shade.
No, shade. No, if we have... if you have a beautiful site with really huge images that take a long time to load, you're going to get penalized by Google, because it's going to take a long time to load on mobile devices, and that's what you don't want. And so we also analyze that. And just if you're a small business person, you're like, I don't know, somebody sent me an image and I've got to use it. You can go to a website called compressor.io, exactly the way it's spelled. And you can upload your image. It will do the image compression for you. It's free. You don't need to know anything. Just go there, upload it, grab the image, and put it on your site.
It's very convenient.
It is.
Because from a graphic designer perspective, doing that manually in Photoshop can be quite time consuming.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly even if you were doing a whole raft of them, you'd use like an action or a batch action or something like that. The nice thing about tools like Compressor is they've already got all the correct settings for a PNG file, for example. So it's because it is not lossless, it is lossy, but there's a point where the human eye can't see the difference, right? So very important stuff there.
And some of these examples, I just like to underline the fact that yes, while there are some very technical implementations to SEO and a very technical side, there's also some updates that anyone could make. Like if you are managing the content on your site, if you're an all-in-one marketer, these things like compressing your site, considering your images, considering your tagging in categories and not using them excessively. A lot of these things can be done like directly through your content management platform and really require very little technical knowledge, and they can really have a really important impact on your SEO presence. So
Yep, and then we've got keyword research and site linking and markup. So site linking is very important too. We'll circle back on keyword research in a bit. It's fundamentally one of the most important things you can do and understand. And you should not just do it once, you should do it continually. So researching your competitors, seeing where they rank for certain keywords, you can do that with free tools. Google's a free search engine. Start typing in terms, and at the bottom of Google search, I'll show you this in a second. At the bottom, there's usually 8 related search terms. Well, that's Google telling you what it thinks are related to your core keywords. You can start with your brand, you can start with your product. Just go down to the bottom. It's called seeding and stemming, and just copy the 8 and then keep going. And very quickly, you'll start to build a list. Google will give you the recommendations, so you can start to build it that way.
There's your bootstrap tip for if you can't afford any of the SEO tools.
It's, you know what, go down and dirty and get right into the search engine and start using it. There's Google's incredibly powerful. There's also advanced operators in Google search that you can just go to the advanced search, and it's got the fields you can fill out where you can check your site, you can check other site, you can check all sorts of different things. So a little bit of knowledge goes a long way, and it's all free. It's just there for you to use. One of the things that's really important too is actually checking to see if you have what are called toxic links, which can penalize your site. There's a ton of tools. You could just Google toxic link checker, plug in your domain, and you'll see if some terrible spammy site is linking to you. And you can create what's called, and it's quite easy to do, it's called a disavow file that says, I don't know who that is or why they're linking to me, because those bad links coming into you will incur a Google search engine penalty as they fight spam.
Yeah, and that is why quality is important. To Dan's point, if you are looking to build backlinks and you're doing it through like really shady sites who don't have good rankings, you want the sites to link back to you that have good positive rankings in Google. If it does have a negative ranking, if it is a site that is considered spam or low quality, yeah, that hurts you more than it helps you. So that backlink is really worth less than nothing. So really consider that when you're crafting your strategy. It may take a bit more time and a bit more, investment in getting those high quality backlinks, but they're going to be much more worthwhile for you.
Yeah. Moving right along, because there's a lot in here. So you can see that when we do a site audit, we're kind of digging into every single key area. The next one is site speed optimizations, and we just talked about why that's so important today. The tool that we kind of use as a go-to is a tool called GT Metrics. It's a really great tool. You plug in your domain. If you create an account, you can have a recurring report, so you can do it once a week. And it will also even send you a video of your page loading if you want, so you can actually see where these things are happening. Sends a full report and actually tells you exactly how to fix it. So it's almost one of those things where, so for example, if you're on Shopify, you're probably going to be okay in a lot of areas, but you may have huge images, and they will tell you, you've got huge images on your product page or over here, fix these images. So if you can get around what looks to be a bunch of propeller head, geek speak, there's some really good information. The nice thing is with GT Metrics is they give you the explanation and they give you how to solve it. And so that can go a long way for figuring out how to get your site down below the 2-second mark, which is really what Google wants, and what you should want, because
Sorry.
Courtney just turned off a bunch of stuff.
All good.
And we're back. It's a good thing there wasn't much plugged into that thing.
It's right next to my foot.
There you go. There you go. So next up, so we do business strategy and analytics, and then what we do is key insights and recommendations, and this is a mix of going through at a higher level Google Analytics and really just looking at the site as well and saying, this doesn't make sense, because oftentimes if you've worked on a site or your team has worked on a site, it's hard to see the forest from the trees, and you assume a lot of things.
Yeah, and we look at some key heartbeat things like, where is your traffic currently coming from? Is there referral traffic? Is it predominantly organic, or is it a lot of direct? And really going beyond kind of the overviews and digging down into any past campaign performance or anything like that we can see. And year-over-year reports are also very important, because obviously in terms of SEO and traffic, it is a longer-term strategy and definitely like a longer-term goal that you want to see build. So definitely look at year-over-year stats as well. If you're looking at just 1 month, it's very difficult to get a sense of which direction you're moving in terms of traffic. So you want to kind of look at the long term as opposed to just different little like small spikes and things like that. So that's definitely part of what we look at in
I'm just seeing some of the lizard people references after we talked about it there. I just got caught up on the thing.
I knew as soon as I said that it would just be all lizard people talk the rest of the episode.
We'll get into the lizard people later, don't worry.
Dan's starting his own spin-off series.
Clearly, yeah. I heard that, did I tell you guys about Buzzsaw on that should Gaia? No?
No.
Buzzsaw is, what's his name? Oliver Stone's son. And he was always just, but he would have like all these conspiracy, like all these different types of people on. And his show was called Buzzsaw, if you get a chance to see it. And then look up the guy, the Lizard King, the Lizard People guy. That episode
that you were trying to show us last
time. That was the best. I was loving it. Well, but 37% of Americans, United States, believe this to be absolutely true. That there's a race of lizard people that live amongst us and are hiding from plain sight. here to try to undermine and destroy us. Donald Trump. Had to say it. Had to be done. So anyways, getting back on track, when we go through all of this, then we start to set the priorities from all of the other, and there's a lot of data that comes out, but you're kind of gleaning the most important. And then we move on to conversion rate optimization. And I actually think we may want to just go through some of the reports, because these get a little bit more advanced. And we maybe can dedicate another episode to just CRO because of the level of importance that it actually is.
For sure, yeah. So to this point, we're looking at the health of your site and your site's presence in general, the SEO side of it, so what's driving people to your site, and then like Dan said, CRO is when they are actually on your site, how do they behave? So yes, that's kind of a whole other chapter. Maybe we just leave that for now.
So here are the 13 standard reports that we put together, and these are quite often custom reports that are set up in Google Analytics. They're not out of the box, but I think maybe what I'll do is I'll run through the 13 quickly and just give a brief description rather than how to set them up, because there is some setup there. So one of the first ones that's very important, site speed metrics by browser and browser version being very important, because newer browsers and the newest versions will typically have the best speed, but you can actually analyze the actual browser version, and this is a little more advanced, but if you find that a large number of your users are using browsers that are either older or out of date, sometimes it may look like you've got a site that will deliver in 2 or 3 seconds, but on an older browser it might be 15 seconds because it can become problematic to identify.
Yeah, and you do have to look at what your audience is using. That is something that GA will tell you. They will divide by browser and things like that, so you can see that.
Yep.
But yeah, don't make the assumption that your audience is super tech savvy and using the latest version of whatever. They could still be on Internet Explorer. So.
Yeah. A lot of people still are. Thankfully,
no offense if you do use it. If you use it,
well,
cool,
no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't use it because Microsoft doesn't even want anyone to use it. They want you to use Microsoft Edge, the newest version that's in Windows 10.
There you go.
There you go. Certainly, I hope you're not on Windows 7. I know some people that are still. That
we
refuse.
Know you're out there. We see you in
refuse to move. Oh, I just got Jessica. Good one. Jessica's use of the emoji is strong.
Oh, yeah.
Site search report, and this one is actually incredibly important and often overlooked. Site search is very important because you can identify users. So users that use site search, and if they're using your site search, means that they're very interested and engaged in what you're doing, and you want to be tracking that. People that use site search will often have a much higher conversion rate. Because there's a level of interest there. It's not that site search causes a higher conversion. It's that people that are searching and using site search are more interested in your product, so that they have a higher conversion rate. What you want to be able to do is encourage, and if you see that number of site searches going down, you want to address that, right? By creating more content and more information that would get people to want to use site search. So it's often very much overlooked. In fact, a lot of sites are, I see, removing certain levels of site search, and that's not a great idea. You want people to be able to search your site.
Yeah, it's definitely an overlooked piece of information. And just to clarify, it's when you actually have a search bar like on your site, and people are already on your site and looking for something.
That's right.
Yeah, just so you guys, I know there's a lot of terms going around, but the site-specific search is great information for when people are on your site. They might not be finding something they're looking for, and then they are turning to the site search.
Once again, the kind of ultimate example I would use is I think it's a really high number. It's above 80% of all users on YouTube use the search, right? So if you've got a site and you've got products, how-tos, FAQs, and lots of good content, that's a way for people to interact with your site, for sure. So number 3, conversion by acquisition source, and that just means when someone does something on your site, where are they coming from? When they make a purchase, are they coming from organic search, social media, paid advertising, partner referral sites? That's a very important thing to know. Behavioral data by content posts is a more complicated one, but what it does is it actually breaks down when users come to your site, what are they doing before, during, and after interacting with your content. So you can see If people are reading 2 or 3 of your blog posts and then exiting, you may want to put an exit intent pop up, or you may want to give them a free giveaway or an offer so you can capture them. That's how you get that from that particular report. Take a break. Landing page performance is just the first page when they hit the site. So the assumption is people are all going to your homepage. Very often, that's wrong. Very often, if you've got especially a blog and content site, your top pages will be those content pages as entry pages. So analyzing what pieces of content you've got that are driving the most traffic is a good way to know what you should continue to be doing.
Yeah, only in very specific scenarios would I advise linking to a homepage, especially from a PPC perspective. I would never do it, but if it's it's too distracting. It's unless you have a very specific, unique site that has like a page by page flow to it, you're dropping someone off with like 100 different options on where to go. And depending on how qualified that is and where this person's coming from, for example, perhaps it's just a link that's in a press release, for example, and you're linking to the homepage. Like I would link to a press page or the page with other releases or news or some sort of next intent. You're trying to guide this person. You don't want to lose that traffic. So think of where the next logical place for them to go is, and that's usually not the homepage.
Yeah, with the homepage, you kind of lose that engagement as well, because towards the landing page, you get right on the page, you already have that excitement, like say you're buying a product or something, you already have that will to do so. And having a landing page that's very direct and to the point will have them sign up for your service or buy your product instantly, much faster.
It's a great point. It's a great point. The next one is very similar to the last one, but is a sessions by landing page. And a session is what Google defines as being a series of actions by an individual user more than one. And so that's important, because if you've got a landing page that has a high number of sessions, that means there's more activity than just visiting the page. And you'll be able to understand what are your top performing pages as well. Behavior by event tracking, I'll skip that one. Events are different animals in Google Analytics, but you can get very granular. For example, if Matt's still around from Astrodog Media, hit play or pause on a video, watch 10%, 25%, 50%, 75%, or watch the entire video. Shared, they're more advanced events, and you can actually create other events if you want.
Based on behavior and very detailed, much more than a goal, which could be like a purchase or a page visit or something more general. Yeah, to Dan's point, it's very granular, and it really helps you understand the behavior of your site.
Yeah, totally. Next up is goal funnel visualizations, and this is, you often see this kind of top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel graphic that digital marketers would talk about. Well, this is the goal funnel for real on your site, where you see top, middle, and bottom of funnel to the goal action. So obviously incredibly important to see where people are falling off. Maybe you have to, plug a leaky funnel is what it's called, is figuring out how to prevent that fall off and optimization.
Definitely. Yeah, where are your leaks? Definitely look at your exit pages that have a high exit rate, where people are leaving your site from that page. Definitely look at, how to keep that traffic on your site as much as possible until they make the action that you want them to take.
That's right. Browser report goes without saying. Do you know what browser people are using? That also goes to browser and platform report. So how many of your users are on tablets, are on mobile devices? What browser are they using? For example, if you see that a large percentage of your users are using Firefox, and maybe your site is not delivering properly on tablet or on Firefox, you may want to fix that, but it's always good to know. Content efficiency analysis report is, again, it's another advanced report, but what it does talk about is, if you have, so for example, you may get fooled by having a landing page performance report and seeing that, wow, this landing page is my #1 page, but you don't know necessarily all of the details of what's happening on that page, right? Maybe people are bouncing back. Maybe people are not going to the next page. What page are they going to next? What's their scroll length on that page? Are they going all the way to the bottom? That report helps reveal some of those insights, so you can even take your best performing landing pages and make them even better.
Yeah, average time on page, also really important metric as well. If you tell me you have you know, 5,000 page views in the last month on this particular page, that's great. But if the average time on page was like 2 seconds, then you know they clearly didn't find what they were looking for. So.
Yeah, you've got to watch out for those landmines. So, you know, when people talk about, this is an old one, I don't know if it's even used anymore. People used to talk about website hits. And one data analyst that I work with, he said, yeah, HIT stands for how idiots track success, which I always kind of liked, because it doesn't mean anything necessarily. You need to know more about, you know, if it's 2 seconds on the page, you've got a big problem. So you may look at something as being really successful, and it's not. So you got to kind of dig further into that.
Yeah, you'll always look at the engagement, like we say, for social media, for everything across the board. You know, the amount of the growth of your audience and the size of your audience, or your traffic, or your lead list, whatever it may be. That's an important growth number, but really it's the engagement, whether that's people, time on page, actions taken on page, or really across the board. Engagement metrics are really the true indicator of behavior. And, you know, higher level metrics like impressions and things like that are more about growth. So.
And next up is site diagnostics and page timing, and also page timing by browser. So you can also see if you're loading more slowly on Safari, which is the default on iOS, so it's very important. Chrome, you know, or any of the other mobile browsers that people might be using. Hours and days report is actually a really interesting one. We went through this the other day. It involves Excel and a pivot table. I love it. It's a really cool report. And it can tell you basically in a nice visual heat map pattern the time and the day that you have the most activity on your site. And you know, if you're a B2B company, or you probably will see, you should hope, 9 to 5 activity. You know, if you're an entertainment site, you may want to see, you know, AHREFS 5 to midnight type thing. This will visualize it in a heat map, so it's easy to see, and you can get a good trend, because you shouldn't use a 30-day period for that. You should be using as much data as you can across, say, 12 to 18 or 24 months.
Yeah, because your site traffic could be seasonal as well, right? Like if you're selling a product that has to do with good weather in like summertime, then your site traffic is probably going to increase in the summer months. So definitely looking at that holistic view when you're looking at site traffic is important. Just like we said before, just as much data as you can look at gives you a better, longer picture.
And the last one, I know, right? See, this is what it takes. The referring site reports digs into not just what sites are sending you traffic, but what happens to the users when they get there. So again, you may have a site sending you a ton of visitors that are bouncing out after 3 seconds. You would think, hey, that's great, they're sending me lots of traffic. Well, fundamentally at that point, they're probably just costing you money. And you may have smaller sites that are actually sending you quality traffic with people that are turning into customers. And that's also a very important thing to note. So that's actually a brief CRO set of reports. It actually goes much deeper. But as a starting point, these are the things that you should be looking at for your brand, your business, whether you're a Shopify store or whether you're a SaaS product with 400 employees at your company.
Yeah, and just like to be realistic about it, like we said, this is a full in-depth report. You know, we're looking at a page or a website that we've never looked at before. We need to know all this background information. It's not that you're going to be running this, 15-page report every single month for yourself.
Right.
I would recommend like something like this in this depth on like a yearly basis. But that those key metrics we're talking about, keyword rankings, like site traffic channels, things like that, that you're looking at those more frequently. Just kind of the real heartbeat metrics of the health of your site.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, there's different models for different types of people. If you're running your own Shopify store, you can use the analytics in Shopify to continually improve them. But understanding what goals are and what referring sites are and all that's important. Now, if you're a full-time SEO at a D2L or a different company like that, then you're going to be digging into this every day because it's your function, right?
For
so
sure.
To a greater or lesser degree, you can go the deep dive or
if you're an SEO or a CRO specialist, this is your daily life. But if you're an all-in-one marketer or an entrepreneur, then probably less frequently and more so looking at the highlights.
Yep. So now on to the fun stuff. Matthew was just telling me about his newfound addiction with IGTV.
It is very addictive. So it's a new platform that Instagram has released, and it's more video screening. So you stream video online, and it's more portrait-based for mobile. So for this platform, now at this time, I believe that you have 10 minutes of video that you're allowed to stream, and eventually it's going to update to over an hour of streaming time of online video that you can post.
I think that's dependent on your size.
And it's depending on the size as well of your channel as well. And you are limited to one channel, but again, one of their focuses is to attract again those YouTubers, those main YouTubers, those Instagram stars kind of as well, to start using this platform. And it's much more engaging, I believe, rather than the YouTube platform, because again, it is still in the making. And again, their main focus right now is engagement. So later on, they're gonna start adding on ads that you can add onto it as well. And then most likely people are gonna start making a livelihood out of this.
For sure, yeah. I think they're kind of trying to capitalize basically on the success that other platforms have seen with live streaming, and then their own success that they've seen with stories. So I think it's kind of like the baby of the two of those. It's has the behind the scenes kind of engagement, fun aspect that stories brings, but has the like real world interaction and real time interaction that live streaming lends. So it is interesting. I'm curious to see how accepted it is.
I spent quite a bit of time already looking at it, and it does take away that professionalism you have to have when you're filming, and all the technicalities where you're just filming from your mobile. And then again, this is primarily because statistics have shown that people are moving to mobile. They're moving away from watching television, watching video online. They're more towards the mobile function of it.
Well, this is definitely, I think, a couple of points come to mind is that Facebook now has Facebook Watch, which is a specific format, which was created in direct response to Netflix and YouTube Red, which is their subscription service. So what we're seeing is this is really the disruption of the traditional cable industry, and it continues to the point to which Disney is pulling their entire library off of Netflix onto their own streaming service, which is to be launched this year. Disney just spent, I think, $71 billion to acquire not Fox News, but all the other Fox assets, like 20th Century Fox and everything associated with it. And so you've got this kind of very big shift, and then traditional cable providers are trying to rejig their model and release their own streaming services. The problem is Netflix has 108 million subscribers in the U.S. That's a third, 1 in 3 Americans at $8.99. So they're very powerful. So Facebook is competing with Netflix with Facebook Watch. Instagram is owned by Facebook. This is part of, I think it's all part of the same strategy.
I think this
to capture those eyeballs.
Yeah,
right?
This is not the first step that they've taken in this kind of taking a pie out of traditional publishers' market. It's definitely something that's seen a lot of disruption over the last year, I would say, from a lot of different providers. So lots of things happening right now. And I think it'll be interesting. I was joking with the others saying how long before Instagram TV becomes an ad placement. Because I think Instagram themselves, congrats, they just crossed the 1 billion users per month mark. So obviously with that kind of insane growth, when other social media platforms are seeing kind of stagnant growth numbers, they're trying to make the most of it right now by introducing this new feature, by introducing, they're just really capitalizing on the growth that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, these are big platforms, right? And keep in mind too that there's a lot of talk about Generation Z. I don't know if you're Gen Z. Okay, there's gonna be up.
No, you might not for Gen Z.
I don't know. It's young. I think it's like they would be like 15 to 19 now or something like that.
Are you 15?
No. I might be wrong on that. I wasn't implying Matt's 15. I was implying I don't know what the cutoff is exactly. But there are now generations coming up that don't know a world without Facebook, for example. They only know Facebook. Like, I know a VIC-20, man, a world before the internet. So it's a very different model where, I'm on Netflix, and I'm Netflix and I buy cable. Well, I don't know why, whatever. It's a thing. But there's a generation coming that will never really know. Like this type of a platform would be the first place they go, right? They don't watch news. They don't watch traditional TV shows. They maybe watch Netflix, they watch YouTube, they watch Insta, Snap. That's much more kind of their world, right? So it is really interesting to see what's going to happen. There's a lot of moves being made. I think the thing is like YouTube is still the number 2 website in the world. So, you know, there's a lot happening there. And also, I think the other thing that's really interesting, and we'll see, is, you know, device integrations like smart TVs, Apple TV, Chromecast, PlayStations, Xboxes. Pretty much on every device now, it's trivial, like hit up YouTube and watch YouTube on, you know, your 60-inch 4K TV, which we do all the time as well. So like these lines are being blurred about what's television and, you know, what's YouTube, because YouTube on a TV looks like TV, right? Just like Netflix does too.
Dylan from Honeypot, he made a comment about the fact that there will be paying content creators. Do you think YouTube should be worried about this?
No, I mean, content creators should be paid, and this is it's a bit of the irony, and it's a danger for content creators, because if you look at YouTube, for example, YouTube changes a policy. Content creators that were maybe making a living, and most kind of don't. I mean, you do have your PewDiePie and Jake Pauls and all these people that are making big money, but a lot of them, some people are just making money, right? They have a job. The reliance on the monetization aspect of Google and YouTube, when they change a policy, people get, you know, sometimes rightly so, they lose their revenue, but it's precarious, right? Because it's not as stable.
It's a borrowed media, right? It's not an owned media, and that's the main problem with not an owned media, is you don't own it, so you don't have that kind of control. But I would agree with Dan in that I think that the content creators who have seen success on YouTube and Twitch and other things like that with their live streams and their video content will probably continue to use those platforms. Maybe might try to replicate their success on Instagram, because obviously the more revenue streams, the better, especially if you're like 100% dependent on that.
And I could talk about this one for like hours, because this is something that I truly believe, is that the revenue model for Google and Facebook is tilted in Facebook and Google's favor, and it's not fair. It's not equitable. When they bill Coca-Cola $1, trust me, you are not getting 50 cents of that dollar. You are getting a small fraction of that dollar. And content creators that put the time and the effort to create professional content, now YouTube is starting to be basically like NBC or CBS. It's like, okay, well, we'll pay you to do your show and we'll fund it. But fundamentally, the company that should be worried is the one that's paying the least. I mean, maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe it's a good thing if Instagram and Facebook start paying content creators a better, fairer share than YouTube. Then YouTube may be forced into a position to become competitive. Because like, ask any YouTuber, and Dylan, if you're on there, and ask Matt Stefanich, and, you know, even in the esports space and streaming, how much money you get for views is ridiculously low. And you know how much it costs to run an ad on the AdWords network on those same channels. All you have to do is go start one campaign on an esports channel to run an ad, and then have that same campaign, like if you run one on your own, and see if you got what the revenue share is of the dollar that you paid versus the penny that you got, right? And so it's inequitable for the content creators. It's actually a real problem on a platform like YouTube, because you have people that work very, very hard, produce great content, and they really don't make that much money.
And to produce it that consistently too, that's usually what I marvel at, is the consistency. Like some of these creators who are like, oh, I've gone over a year making a video every single day. Like that to me is just, that is a crazy amount of consistency to aspire to. And that they should be given, you know, the rightful due. And I think that would be really wise of Facebook to capitalize on those pain points, especially over the last few years, just with the popularity of people actually making a living doing this. There's a lot more people who are trying to do it, and as opposed to the like 1% of YouTubers who are actually making a living, there's an increasing swell of people trying to do it, and not just on YouTube.
I think that's primarily because of the consistency. Every single day posting something engaging.
For sure.
And Matt Stefanich just brought up Twitch has one of the best monetization programs, and that's true because of subscriptions and their rev share. However, I will give props out to Mixer, which is owned by Microsoft, which is seeing a flood of Twitch streamers leaving Twitch for Mixer because Microsoft has come in and given a much better offer than Twitch. So I guess to the end of that whole thing, and we're probably going to have to wrap now because we're just over an hour, is it fundamentally, this is probably a good evolution, right? When it was just YouTube and just Twitch, if you were streaming and trying to monetize, you didn't have a lot of options. Now you've got multiple platforms that are willing to monetize, and hopefully that will drive up revenues. Because look, how much money is Google making every quarter, right? Amazon,
Not much.
all of the companies, they're
Pennies.
making a couple of cents, astronomical levels of profit. The point to which they don't even know what to do with their money anymore. And yet you've got millions of YouTubers, scraping it for bits on revenue share on advertising. So I think it's a fair thing and it's a good evolution. So hopefully, I'm kind of rooting for all of them. I think I personally, over the years, I mean, at one point it was IBM was the big evil company, and then it was Microsoft, the big evil company, and now it's Google, the big evil company, and Facebook, which they are in a sense. But the domination of one channel is a bad thing, and at least there's some amount of competition, and hopefully it'll become a little more equitable, right? So
For sure.
Hopefully it drives it up.
yeah, well, yeah, you would think, because like you say, a lot of these people are putting an amazing amount of work. Even the higher end YouTubers, like, I mean, PewDiePie has a huge staff. I mean, he's pretty much a production company unto himself, right? And you can say what you want about the Paul brothers, but they also do have a staff. Like it's a thing, and they have a shtick and whatever. I'm just leaving all that alone. But these are basically businesses that are running as production companies and should be treated as such. So anyhow, leaving on that note, we got through one of our What's New IGTV.
Yeah,
So-
we'll leave some of the what's new items for next week, I guess. Some rollouts by YouTube and Google Analytics, but
You know what we should do?
Well-
Here's what we should do.
what?
We should start doing IGTV for What's New for Honeypot and do it like every couple of days for like 5 minutes.
There you go.
There you go. On it?
On it. We need
Matthew
to get
can do
our
it.
channel. They're rolling out. They're rolling it out. We're waiting. I've been checking all week, and our Honeypot Instagram channel hasn't gotten it yet. So. I have to
Oh,
check
the
it out.
business accounts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to set up our channel.
Yeah.
It was nice. It's just like this new orange icon. What is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you
Instagram.
haven't checked out Instagram TV and you're like, what are these guys talking about? When you open it right next to your little DM envelope in the top right corner, there should be this orangish kind of button now that you can click, and it'll open the Instagram TV window for you. So check it out.
Yeah.
See what's what.
That's right.
Oh.
There. You're not going to be able to see it.
Good
that.
stuff. Well, it's right there.
There it is. All right, everybody. Well, we went a little bit over time, and we kind of dug into CRO a bit, but
Right.
that's a wrap for a week.
Yeah, thanks for all the great comments and for all the love, Ben Miller. Thanks for repping, one of our favorite fans. Thanks for
Yeah,
tuning in.
and share it to your timeline. Come on, give us a good, you can even talk about the lizard people if you want.
Don't let me down, Ben.
There you go.
All right, everybody, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week on Live. I will not be here next week because I am moving on Friday.
All right. Wow. Courtney's hosting the live stream next Friday. There you go.
Maybe I can dial in.
Maybe. We'll
Maybe.
see what happens.
Don't know what time we get the keys for the new house.
That might be beyond my technical
Or
capabilities.
just IGTV.
It's actually easy on this. You just send a link to me, and I can click it,
just
and it'll do it
Just
on
call
the
it.
thing.
IGTV from your
I'm
home.
just gonna call him and hold the phone up to the mic.
Yeah, there you go.
That's my tech solution.
We'll get Matt Stefanich in here. He can do it.
Matt, you're on the live
Yeah.
with me next week. Both
right.
the Matts.
There you go. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend.